The Anarchists of Ancient China. The main goal of Chinese philosophy was always to end political conflict and to return the country to a state of harmony. The leading philosophy on how to attain this was Confucianism, which taught that progress should start at the individual level. Through parental love and the study of the classics, they believed, individuals can be cultivated into gentlemen, or junzi, and these junzi would in turn contribute to an ordered and stable society. On the complete opposite side of the spectrum were the Daoists, who believed that all the earnest striving of the Confucianists was pointless, even laughable. They concluded that society itself was the problem. It was inherently corrupt and beyond redemption. There was no need for Confucian cultivation, they believed. In fact, cultivation was artificial and therefore part of the problem. In their view, laws, status, profit, and as you shall see, even morality, caused more problems than it solved. It caused oppression, poverty, war, suffering, and criminal behavior. The otherwise respected Confucian sages, they claimed, kept this system in place, whereas the poor and criminals were mere victims of the system. In fact, the Daoist philosopher Zhuangzi gave voice to a criminal named Robert Z, who claimed the world would be a better place if Confucianists would be caned and bandits were set free. Instead, the Daoists recommended a life in tune with nature. Without the artifice of society, they believed, people would become naturally good. Some of the Daoists chose to live alone in the wilderness, while others settled in small self-sustaining communities. And some, as we shall see, even advocated for anarchy, a society without rulers. Understandably, the Confucianists were horrified by the Daoist attempts to undercut the stability of an already fragile society, and also by the defense of criminals. And the Daoists were equally horrified by the coercion and oppression that was part of urban life. And there we have it, the left-right divide that is still dividing us to this day. Let's start. Hey, good to see you. This is Stephan, author of In Search of the Sublime. On this World History channel, we'll trace humanity's relentless pursuit of scientific truth, moral excellence, and enlightenment. We'll meet anyone from Mesopotamian astronomers and Indian yogis to Greek philosophers and Enlightenment scientists. And you'll meet them firsthand using primary sources, giving you valuable insights that transcend the surface-level understanding you get on other channels. Go check it out for yourself. Let's start. The two most dominant schools of philosophy in Chinese history are Confucianism and Daoism, and in many ways they are diametrically opposed. The Confucians saw the loving bonds between parents and children as the foundation for a good and harmonic society. This bond, they claimed, would teach citizens to become effective contributors to society. And without this bond, society would fall apart. To the Confucians, human beings are a work in progress. Over their lifetime, people's morality had to be refined through education in history and ancient ritual, they claimed, and ideally this cultivation would turn a man into a gentleman or a junzi. This, for instance, explains why the Analects, the main book of Confucius, starts with, "The master said, 'Is it not a pleasure to learn, and, when it is timely, to practice what you have learned?'" To become a junzi required lifelong learning. The Daoists, in contrast, found this type of cultivation unnatural and forced, and as a result even counter-effective. Like the Romantic philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau of the 18th century, they believed that man was good by nature, if not coerced by the unnatural living standards of city life. Rousseau claimed that most of our problems arose when we traded our simple life in nature with city life and allowed ourselves to be ruled over by governments. His idealization of primitive life has often been summarized with the term noble savage in the West. As a consequence of this type of thinking, the Daoists sought to escape society altogether. They retreated to nature to live in tune with the Tao, the energetic force of nature that allows everything in the universe to happen by itself, as they said it. Many Daoists became hermits, and others started small self-sustaining communities where people lived a simple life in tune with nature, unburdened, as they said, by greed, punishments and the other vices of urban life. The legendary Daoist Lao Tzu, in his book The Tao Te Ching, described what life would look like in such an utopian society. He said, "Let there be a little country without many people. Let them have tools that do the work of 10 or 100 and never use them. Let them be mindful of death and disinclined to long journeys. They'd have ships and carriages, but no place to go. They'd have armor and weapons, but no parades. Instead of writing, they might go back to using knotted cords. They'd enjoy eating, take pleasure in clothes, and be happy with their houses, devoted to their customs. The next little country might be so close that people could hear cocks crowing and dogs barking there. But they would get old and die without ever having been there." And this idyllic description would become influential throughout the centuries. The strongest criticism of Confucianism came from Zhuangzi. He claimed that all attempts by Confucianists to better society usually actually made things worse. To illustrate this point, he told the story of horses who functioned perfectly in their natural habitat, but were quickly driven to death after they had been captured by Po Lo, who ironically claimed to be good with horses. We read, "Once he captured these horses, Po Lo proceeded to singe them, shave them, pare them, brand them, bind them, tie them up in stable and stall. He goes on to starve them, make them go thirsty, race them, prance them, pull them into line, force them to run side by side. In front of them the worry of bit and rein, behind them the terror of whip and crop, until they all died." The same fault, he then continued, is committed by the man who handle the affairs of the world. Instead, human beings should admit that they are in no position to understand how to change society. They should halt their attempts to better society, which would immediately make everyone happier. This, according to Zhuangzi, would lead to a utopian society. We read, "In an age of perfect virtue, the gait of men is slow and ambling. Their gaze is steady and mild. In such an age, mountains have no paths or trails, lakes no boats or bridges. In this age of perfect virtue, man lived the same as birds and beasts." Who in this age knows anything about Zhuangzi or petty man, the opposite of Zhuangzi? Dull and unwitting, men have no wisdom. And as a result, their virtue, with a capital V, does not depart from them. Dull and unwitting, they have no desire. This is uncarved simplicity. In uncarved simplicity, the people attain their true nature. So without the wisdom of the Confucianist, people will naturally be virtuous. A sage such as Confucius, he continued, would only disrupt the perfect state of nature. We continue, "Then along comes the sage, huffing and puffing after benevolence, which is a main Confucian concept, reaching on tiptoe for righteousness, another Confucian concept, and the world for the first time has doubts. Mooning and mouthing over his music, sipping and stitching away at the rites, and the world for the first time is divided. The way and its virtue were destroyed in order to create benevolence and righteousness. This was the fault of the sage. When horses live on the plain, they eat grass and drink from the stream. Pleased, they twine their necks together and rub. Angry, they turn back to back and kick. This is all horses know how to do. But if you pile poles and yokes on them, and line them in crossbars and shafts, then they will learn to snap the crossbars, break the yoke, rip the carriage top, jam the bit, and chew the reins. Thus horses learn how to commit the worst kinds of mischief. This is the crime of Po Lo. The next quote that I'm going to present of Zhuangzi conveys his true hatred of the Confucian project. I think personally that Zhuangzi was radicalized by his own thoughts at this point. For the Confucians, however flawed they were, did care for the plight of the poor. For centuries, they would protest bad government policies that were hurtful to the poor, and they generally dedicated their lives to benevolence and righteousness. But nevertheless, this is what Zhuangzi said. In the world today, the victims of the death penalty lie heaped together. The sufferers of punishments are never out of each other's sight. And now come the Confucianists, waving their arms, striding in the very midst of the chained-up men. Ah, that they should go this far, that they should be so brazen, so lacking of any sense of shame. Who can convince me that sagely wisdom is not in fact the wedge that fastens the wooden neck brace, and that benevolence and righteousness are not in fact the loop and lock of these chains? Here we have come at the complete inability of people to understand each other, across that still common left-right divide. Also controversial was Zhuangzi's chat with Robert C., who made the case that Confucian sages were a greater menace for the world than even thieves. The robber said, "Until the sage is dead, great thieves will never cease to appear. And if you pile on more sages in hopes of bringing the world to order, you'll be only piling up more profit for Robert C." Or even more harshly, cudgel and cane the sages, and let the thieves and bandits go their way. Then the world will be at last well ordered. A number of Daoists of the later Han Dynasty, in the 2nd century AD, even explicitly flirted with anarchy. The word anarchy in modern English comes from the Greek anarchos, which means without a king. And in China something similar happened. Here the word for anarchy was wujun, also literally meaning without a king. One of these anarchists was Zhuangzi, a member of a group of hippies known as the Seven Worthies of the Bamboo Grove. In an attempt to escape what they saw as the corruption of society, these 7 eccentric men gathered in a small bamboo forest, where they drank excessive amounts of alcohol, made witty remarks and put-downs, and created great works of art, music and poetry. Zhuangzi wrote a poem called Biography of Master Great Man, about a mythological figure as old as creation itself, who received a letter, ironically, from a Confucian junzi who criticized him for his unconventional ways. In his reply, Great Man spoke of a utopian community without a ruler, where, quote, all beings were peaceful and all affairs were well ordered. But then, with good intentions, class differences were introduced to society, which turned the perfect society into a violent chaos. As a result, Great Man became an anarchist. He said, when rulers are set up, tyranny arises. When officials are established, thieves are born. You idly ordain rights and laws, only to bind the lowly common people. Another anarchist from the 3rd century AD, Bao Jingyan, took the next step by attributing malice to the ruling class. In his view, the hierarchy of society was not at all based on meritocracy, a Confucian concept, but was merely a pretext for oppression. Hierarchies, he claimed, make people strive for reputation, which results in inequality between the rich and the poor, and which in turn leads to thievery and finally even violence and war. Instead, he claimed, people should share resources together in a harmonious community. As a final example of Daoist anarchy, I want to mention the poem Peach Blossom Spring by Tao Qian. The work tells of a fisherman who lost his way and found a tunnel at the end of which lay a hidden land, where a people lived who had fled the harsh Qin dynasty. And during this dynasty, by the way, that famous terracotta army was created. There, in this hidden land, the people lived carefree and happy, without a government and without rights to teach people morality. When the fisherman finally left, he was asked not to reveal the hidden land, but he carefully memorized the route back, and once home, he asked the governor to organize an expedition to revisit the site. But no matter how hard they tried, they could not find the land. As we read, it could not be found through conscious effort, that is, through the Confucian way of life, but only through original simplicity, a Daoist concept. And now a final remark. Perhaps surprisingly, none of these philosophical Daoists, as they are called for a revolution to overthrow the ruling powers. Instead, they tended to support those small parallel communities, or they just kept their interests merely theoretical. This was, however, not the case for the religious Daoists, who coordinated violent peasant rebellions. And these rebellions are intimately linked to the fall of the Han Dynasty, which I discuss in detail in my lecture on the fall of Han. But for now, I hope you were as perplexed as I was by the ideas of the ancient Chinese anarchists. Thanks for watching, and if you want to know more about Chinese history, or many other topics from world history, read my book In Search of the Sublime. You can read it for free on worldhistorybook.com, or you can buy it on Amazon. See you next time. Bye bye.